All right, I'm super excited today because today we are talking everything short-term rentals, but really on steroids. Think about buying why think about buying one when you can buy, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 rooms at one time, all with motel hotel flipping. So today I'm interviewing Diya Liu, and that's what she does now across the United States. And she even has her own mastermind group teaching others how to do that too. Coming up next. Welcome to the Cash Flow Happy Hour podcast. I'm your host, Josh Baldovino, and on this show, you can join us live as we interview investors and share how they are increasing their cash flow. So grab a drink and let's get into it. Dia, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Great. I'm doing great.
So you mentioned beforehand that you are in a hotel room, your actual hotel room. Where are you exactly?
I'm in the Ozarks in on the Arkansas side, and we have 48 rooms here. And so I'm in one of the pre-renovated hotel rooms, so you can actually. I try to blur out the background, but you can kind of see that there's a tub behind me, in the room, and there's very dark drapes, and there's a lot of dated wallpaper and drop ceiling right now.
Man, so you're hiding the before picture because you don't want to see you don't want to show the full magic right now, I guess.
Yeah. But we're definitely taking a lot of before and after photos. So we're going to start up a whole Instagram for the progress of the hotel renovation at some point. So
Okay. Well, super fun. Well, for those who are just watching either live, thank you so much for coming on live. If you are watching in the post play, hello too. You can link down to Dia's personal Instagram that's down below, and I'm sure she'll have more Instagrams with each of her projects coming up. But Dia, for those who don't know who you are, can you give the quick 30-second origin story of what your background is and how you got into real estate investing?
yeah, so I my background's actually in engineering, and then in law school, and then becoming a lawyer and practicing law for about 5 years at larger law firms in New York City as well as Austin, Texas, before I first started real estate investing with house hacking and renting out some of my rooms on Airbnb. And then I went into short-term rentals investing and quit my full-time job after I reached about 9 short-term rentals. And then in 2021, I decided to go big or go home and decided to get into hotel investing. So now we have 2 hotels and 1 apartment complex, and we're analyzing more and more hotel deals each day.
Wow, that's okay. So you went from house hacking to short-term rental. Well, you went short-term rental house hacking, right? We'll make
Yes.
that specifically. So renting by the rooms, 9 Airbnbs, and then are now switching to hotels. When did you first when did the house hack start?
Um, how long was it? 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the first hotel was 2021. That's 2 years now. Man, that's okay, so one, why short-term rentals? Let's start
Mhm.
there.
So I really like to travel. I've always loved traveling as a kid. We didn't really have a lot of money growing up, but my parents definitely made sure that I got to see the world, even if it was on a dime. So we would cram 7, 8 people into one car and then drive around to national parks. We would stay at Motel 6, and then we would cram more people into the hotel room and basically saw a lot of the USA that way. And then even before that, when I was in China, we were on the road a lot collecting plant samples for my parents for their job. And so I just always loved traveling. And so I got into short-term rentals initially when I went into real estate investing because I felt like with my background in understanding design and understanding digital marketing and understanding number crunching as well as contract negotiation and regulations, I felt like and then also loving travel. I think on top of that, I think short-term rental just made a lot of sense. There's a lot of people in the real estate industry that knew a lot more about many forms of real estate investing than I did. But I felt like because of my value add in design and digital marketing and those sort of things that I felt like I could kill it in vacation rental space, compared to my competitors, basically.
Yeah, like the marketing, and maybe this is because I'm also a marketer. Like the marketing side of short-term rentals is much more detail oriented than most people think, and
Mhm,
it's super visual. So
mhm.
you having the design, kind of background and the talent skill set, and also what kind of law did you practice too?
Patent litigation. So totally unrelated to real estate, but I think that
Okay,
having those skills in grounded in law, it really helps a lot in contract negotiations and really getting the seller to come down on their prices, and then also to speak to other zoning attorneys and other experts in various fields of real estate law.
gotcha, gotcha. No, I mean that's obviously, that is very applicable to. Then there's a million different contracts, right? When you're talking about investing. Um, okay, so you have nine, or you had nine short-term rentals. For those who are watching live, if you are looking, or if you invest in a certain market, let us know in the comments too. Curious to know. But now you've pivoted to hotels. Where are your hotels now?
So we have an apartment complex in San Antonio, Texas, that we're doing midterm rentals and short-term rentals on. We have Ozarks Hotel, the one I'm currently staying in, is in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, which is relatively small town in the Ozarks, and we have 48 rooms here. And then we bought another property in on the Gulf Coast of Texas that's 14 units, that is being rehabbed right now as well.
Okay. Wow. So you're kind of all over the place. Um, and is there a specific hotel type that you're looking for?
So I'm still open to short-term rentals, by the way. I'm still open to, RV parks, but really, I would say that for hotels specifically, we're looking at somewhere between 20 units to 100 units right now, and non-franchise, non-flagged. Basically, it's not a Hilton, not a Marriott, not a Days Inn, not a Holiday Inn. Just it doesn't have a franchise agreement on it, that sort of hotel, just because. And then we like the motels a little bit better just because it's, motels are basically the ones that all the rooms have a door to the outside versus the hotels that have a hallway that you have to enter
Mm.
first, or a lobby that you have to enter first in order to get to the rooms. We like that a lot better just because I think that if we're doing automated check-in checkouts, it just makes a lot more sense to pick motels over hotels, but we definitely analyze hotels as well.
That's actually a really important differentiator that I didn't realize that a lot of motels do have that exterior access versus hotels having the hallway. Okay, really cool. So, what got you excited about hotels, anyways? You were operating short-term rentals. I'm sure that you were killing it. Like, what was that pivot?
Yeah, I want to clarify that I still love short-term rentals. I'm
Hmm.
still a part of the STR team. I have quite a few short-term rentals in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas right now. But what it really got me thinking about hotels and thinking bigger is that one, if you're doing so much work, so much setup, so much headache, so much figuring out loan situations, utilities, and etc., why not work the same amount or maybe slightly harder and get 50 Airbnbs at once, right? Or short-term rentals at once. And that was the first thing. But also when I was working on, selling some of my short-term rentals to do bigger projects, I also realized that, it doesn't matter if I'm making 70K on a short-term rental and my neighbor is making 20K on their long-term or short-term rental. I'm still, in terms of comps, I'm still going to comp to them, right? So to my
Hmm.
neighbors in terms of what they're selling their property at. But if now operating 6 doors and up, 5 doors and up, really, and then I'm getting to commercial land appraisal space, then now how my property is praised, it's a little bit more focused on the performance of my property and how much money I'm making. So if I'm making 2x more, it's not saying that I'm automatically going to be priced 2x more
Hmm.
per se, but definitely, that is the general idea, is that I'm going to make a lot more money on the sale of the property as well. And then finally, actually, there's two more things. One is SDR regulations are coming in for a lot of towns, and I'm sure that that is the bane of all short-term rental operators existing.
Hmm.
And it's something that keeps a lot of people up at night. But this is the thing, like if we get SDR regulations in our town, that helps us as hotel owners. And so we're going to be the only ones on Airbnb, or we're going to be one of the main players on Airbnb, or any of the typical short-term rental websites, if we are doing this weird hybrid short-term rental hotel model. And so that is another reason why I decided to go into hotel investing. And then finally is that it's really a seller's market right now. A lot of people have experienced frustrations in losing the to multiple offer situations and etc. And it's actually a lot less that sort of scenario in hotels right now. And so there's not a lot of people buying hotels out there. And not a lot of people who understand how to operate hotels. And so, if you are able to buy a hotel and just, let's say, spend 2x more
Mhm.
than buying a luxury vacation rental, or even the same price as a luxury vacation rental, why not go there instead of buying a vacation rental?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, there's kind of breaking down what you just said. I feel like a lot of times, a lot of the podcasts, when they're talking about multifamily, they say the same thing, right? You can burr one property or you could burr 100 doors at once. And it sounds like that's almost the same with your model here is now you're burring and you're forcing that appreciation just based on, increased gross revenue, um, and bringing the evaluation that way. And then the last thing that I'll say too, especially on that permit note, um, I don't know if you know my background, but we have one in Yucca Valley, specifically in the Joshua Tree area. And I know that Betsy is also, well, she's in 29 Palms, so I saw on the live stream too, and a few other of us who are in Joshua Tree, and that's been the hot topic of the area and a lot of the areas. And so it's interesting to see, like, that one is a huge driver of where people are investing. And so now you're commercial lodging, so the rules are way different.
Yeah. And I would say that, for a lot of our hotel properties, we can actually build Airbnbs on the back of our hotel parcel, right? So a lot of people are like, why would you buy a hotel? Why would people stay in a hotel room when they're renting through Airbnb? But it's like, this Ozarks hotel that we're in, we still have an acre of forest in the back, and we can build whatever we want. We are thinking about tree houses, we're thinking about A-frames, we can build a bunch of them, and those are still on hotel zoning. And so those can be Airbnb all day long. It doesn't matter if the town has SDR regulations or not. So we can list those on Airbnb, and we can list the front hotel rooms just purely on hotel websites. We can do a whole hybrid,
Yeah.
investment strategy.
Well, I mean, and it's you think about the unique stays, right? Like those geodomes, and it's people who are putting a commercial business on a residential property that's zone residential, which then,
Yes.
from the city perspective, makes it harder. But
Mhm.
now you're doing these really cool things in a way that doesn't disturb residents, that still creates that unique experience, and then you're just marketing it to where people who want to find those unique experiences go to, which is the booking platforms.
Mhm.
Man, I like it. Okay. So I, I guess, is there, when it comes to your short-term rentals versus your hotels, like how much harder is it to operate, say, one luxury short-term rental versus a 30 unit or 30 keys, right? I think Alex was saying that in another call that I heard.
Mhm.
Hotel. It kind of run me through what it takes. Like, is it that much harder?
Yeah, so in the hotel industry, we call them keys instead of doors, but I think that it's actually arguably easier to run a hotel than a short-term rental. And the reason I say that is because when you have the economies of scale, then you can actually hire a dedicated cleaning team. You can hire a dedicated manager that's on site 24/7. You can have a whole systematized thing that, team that you train specifically for your hotel.
Hmm.
And so that makes it a lot easier than, let's say, if I'm trying to buy in the Ozarks and I'm trying to hire a cleaner to come out to just my property just for, my one short-term rental, that's going to be a lot more difficult in finding the right person to it clean. But now if I'm like, hey, you're going to be guaranteed this much W-2 income every single week, now all of a sudden the pool of applicants is a lot greater, right? Now it's not just someone who only needs a little bit of income on the side to do
Mhm.
this. It's someone who can actually reliably do this 24/7. And so we have an on-site manager for our Ozarks hotel. She's
Mhm.
been with the hotel for over 10 years with the previous owners. So she knows this hotel inside and out. She's really excited about how we're going to convert these into our brand new vision. So I actually think that it's easier. In terms of tech stack, it really depends on what kind of operations you're going to have. Are you going to
Mhm.
have more of a short-term rental type operations, or are you going to have more of a hotel operations? And so for hotels, it doesn't really make sense to have 48 identical Airbnb listings, right? So it
Mhm.
doesn't really work well to use, let's say, Hostfully or OwnerRez or any of these standard STR management platforms. We use something called Cloudbeds,
Mm.
and it's something that both STR operators as well as hotel owners alike can use. And so we're using that for our hotel in the Ozarks, but we might use something different potentially for our hotel in Texas, just because that one is going to be a lot more like a short-term rental rather than a traditional hotel, because each room will be decorated differently versus our front 32 units here in the Ozarks are going to be almost identical. So if someone books one room, they can be shuffled to another room to maximize occupancy. And that's something
Mm.
that short-term rental software doesn't really do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, again, they're identical, so how can someone really differentiate between room 1 versus room 19, right? Um, and then you did mention that you have an on-site staff for your Ozark property. I'm sure that's not gonna be the same for all of yours. I'm sure there's a key number, all right, that makes sense to have someone full-time that's
Mhm.
there. Um, what about in terms of, say, extra amenities like restaurants? I know there's a lot of hotels and motels that have restaurants attached to that. Have you looked at those and underwrote those at all? What do you think about
Um,
those?
we've underwritten them, but from our underwriting perspective, we're just basically going to lease them out of the LC, right? So it's just gonna be like if we had a hotel restaurant on site, then we're just gonna say like, hey, that space will be leased out at $2,000 a month. That is a totally different entity. And that's also good from a legal perspective too, because it's a different set of risks. So you don't
Mhm,
necessarily want, if you have investors or whatever, you don't want to expose them to someone suing the restaurant for something, right? So even if it's going to be the same people in that LC, you definitely
mhm.
want a different LC for that. And
Gotcha.
so on the underwriting side for hotels, anything that's slightly different like that, such as like a different bike rental place that you have on the
Mhm.
property or um, a restaurant on the property, you just want to underwrite that as if it's just something that's a different LC that's leasing it from the space from you. And we definitely look into putting food trucks on the property if there's going to be parking spaces. But once again, we're not in the restaurant industry, so we're probably just going to hire or have someone who's experienced food and beverage operator handle
Mhm.
that part, and we're just going to incentivize that sort of partnership, maybe with reduced rent or maybe a profit share so that their risks are lower, something like that, so that we're offering that great amenity of, let's say, having a taco truck on site, but not really getting some of the downsides. I'm trying to figure out staffing, trying to
Yeah.
figure out a totally different system.
No, that makes a lot of sense. What about weddings? I mean, that's sure, your hotels are beautiful, so I'm sure there's gonna be some.
Yeah, so that's something that we're exploring right now. So I haven't done wedding venues before, but I'm because we have such a great space in the back of this Ozarks hotel, we're exploring the concept of maybe doing in short, very, very small weddings, not really
Mhm.
larger weddings, but maybe like 20, 30 people weddings that are with a giant deck that's overlooking the forest. That might be kind of romantic for elopement or something like that. So we are looking into that, but we're definitely not going to have larger wedding events. We do have someone who's coming on site to help us figure that piece out. She has already worked at a different boutique hotel, for 2 years, and they had a lot of yoga retreats and wedding, and smaller weddings and etc. So that's one of her things that she's helping us with.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's good to know that you're thinking about it. I'm sure that you are, and there's a million other kind of added values that you can bring additional income into your business model. Is there
Mhm.
anything like really different and unique and kind of off the beaten path that you're working on?
Well, so our how we're using our tech stack is going to be different. So my business partner has 20 years in the tech industry, and he
Mhm.
comes from a software developer as well as technical sales background, and so he's really leveraging that background to help build out our technical backbone on all our properties. And so he's almost like a CTO, and basically. And
Awesome.
so what we're doing that I thought was really cool for our hotel is that we're building a whole guest interface. You don't have to download any apps, but they see something that looks like an app on their
Mm,
browser, and it shows you the check-in information, similar to Marriott or Hilton, where they have a little check-in page for you. We're going to have
mhm.
that for the guests, and they can actually book kayaks or bike rentals, or maybe eventually even book restaurant reservations on our portal.
Wow. That is, I mean, that's why apps work, right? It's because it's so simple to use and it makes it almost a no-brainer. And it's such a great added value where you can build your own platform on whatever you guys end up using. So, curious to see when you guys get that built out.
Mhm.
Um, how about in terms of underwriting? So how does this differ from like your traditional, say, multifamily underwriting?
So I've actually had to create my own underwriting tool from scratch just because a lot of the traditional multifamily underwriting calculators, they're assuming like a 12-month stabilized lease that is recurring, right? So how they're tracking cash flow is different than the hotel industry, which is RevPAR, ADR, occupancy. Those are the same metrics that short-term rental operators are very familiar with. And
Mhm,
so that's actually very, very different in terms of how you calculate revenue and how you anticipate it, because now you also have to worry about seasonality,
mhm,
in terms of renovations, or right, your cash flow could be totally different if you decide to renovate in the summer or in the winter, right? Because unlike long-term rentals, you're not getting the same amount of revenue every single month. Sometimes makes more sense to renovate certain units over others during the off season versus the peak season. So that's a lot of revenue management,
mhm.
but also just from an operational perspective. There's a lot of literature out there on revenue management that's very similar to short-term rental operations. There's whole Unlike short-term rental operators who just try to figure this out themselves,
Yeah.
there's actually entire degrees that people get on revenue management. And so talking to one of these people at a hotel conference is mind blowing. It's like, whoa, all this time people are trying to figure this out. I see people on Airbnb forums, by the way. I have a Facebook group that Airbnb professional hosts. That's about 42,000 members. So I see a lot of people post about revenue management, but there's not really like a centralized formula for how to do it, best practices or anything like that. So that's really interesting from a hotel perspective that you also don't get from a multifamily perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like random backstory. So I used to be a academic advisor at the University of Hawaii, and it was a joint school with the travel industry management school. And I would see these courses in the syllabuses that the students were taking, but obviously back then, 5 years ago, I didn't care.
Hmm.
Um, do I wish that I took some of those classes when I had a tuition waiver? Probably no, but hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
And you said that your Facebook group was Airbnb professional hosts.
Yes.
Okay, so those who are watching, make sure to go into Facebook, search that group. I have a part of it, and Dia's really active into it. So I would say kudos to you.
Yeah.
Uh, how about let's talk about the group real fast. Why did you start it, and when did you start it?
So I actually took it over from one of my fellow SDR operator friends when he went into the food and beverage industry. But I decided that, I really want to grow a community of people, basically, helping hosts. There's a lot of
Mhm,
Airbnb groups out there that are more geared towards rental arbitrage. But I really wanted a community where it's more on how short-term rental investing plays into other traditional real estate investing principles, such as BRRRR, such as flipping, such
Mhm.
as 1031 exchanges, tax benefits, and etc. I really felt like there was a lack, there was a big hole in the market for someone to kind of explain how short-term rental investing really fits into the other types of real estate investing strategies, like wholesaling, like assumption strategies, and etc. So I really wanted to have a community where we can talk about different creative real estate investing strategies and how they relate to short-term rentals, as well as the traditional short-term rental investing principles.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably assume that there's a gap in education now with the boom of short-term rentals just because of how new it is. And now you're taking that same kind of remote operation business model into motels and hotels, and that's a completely different model than most people know.
Yeah.
Uh, do you find because you're taking that model, do you find that there's any type of education you have to give the guests as they check in? Or how does that work as you're communicating that to your target audience?
So our current hotel, so our it kind of depends on your target demographic. So
Mhm.
if someone's already booking on Airbnb and you already put in the description that this is actually a hotel room and this is, let's say, 300 square feet, that's something you definitely have to put, right? So otherwise
Mhm.
they're expecting a standalone house. They arrive, it's not a standalone house. That's something that you have to disclose up front.
Yep.
But in terms of the people who are booking just as if it's a normal hotel, there's not that much that would be different to their experience other than the hotel will be a lot more updated and check-in will be a lot more automated. And in it, in our current hotel, a lot of the target demographic is going to be both younger folks but also older folks, and so the older folks usually prefer person to person interaction over
Mhm.
automated check-ins, and so still having a familiar face that they see all the time, they've seen all the time because they are return customers, to kind of check them in is something that they expect. And to talk to people on the phone when they're booking their reservation versus booking online and something that they expect.
Mm.
And so so the expectation is different based on the clientele versus I think that the typical Airbnb or VRBO travelers, a little more proficient, at least
Mhm.
comparatively, in terms of figuring out how to book on an online platform, in terms of figuring out to follow the instructions that you give them in an automated check-in message, and then just basically go straight to the unit and check in. And so there is a little more hand holding with the people who traditionally are hotel guests. But I think that over time, because we are targeting a certain demographic, that over time, more and more folks will get used to the automated check-ins. I also think that COVID-19 helped us a lot in
Mhm.
that there's more hotels are doing contactless check-ins as well.
So I would have identified that that is kind of a speed bump in terms of a certain demographic. Have you found then that as you've gone to this fully 100% contactless option, are you committing to that, or are you finding a way to kind of have a hybrid approach?
Yeah, so for the hotels where we're still going to have the traditional hotel vibe in terms of being listed on the traditional hotel booking websites, then for sure we're going to have a dedicated front desk.
Mm.
Option to for people to check in, and for people to book, walk in and create a booking, for people to call and create a booking. That needs to be something that we're able to do, which once again means that our technical backbone has to be different than the traditional short-term rental,
Mhm.
management software. Um, and so for our hotels are going to be run fully like short-term rentals because they're completely just going to be booked on Airbnb and VRBO. Then we're not going to have a front desk for those because they're the expectations of guests when they're booking on Airbnb is that there's not going to be anyone to bother you at check-in. You
Yeah.
just check in, you have the code, and that's it. And so it's really interesting to see the different guest expectations based on which platform they book.
Yeah. And I mean, that's definitely interesting in terms of where they're booking, what they expect. And then, of course, trying to figure out what if someone does just walk in from the street, and how do you handle that? Well, let's dive into the juicy parts here. Could you break down one of the deals that you have under work? So, how much did you get it for? How much are you estimating? Or did you spend in rehab? And kind of now, what's the cash on cash return?
Yeah, so both our hotel deals that we have, we bought it relatively recently. So, in terms of we don't have a whole year of
Hmm.
tracking for the numbers yet, but I can share with you the brief numbers for both. So, for our Ozarks hotel, we bought it for a whopping 750K, which is super dirt cheap. For
Hmm.
especially for your Texas and California and New York investors, you're like, what? That I can't even get a single family that price.
How many
Um,
rooms is that again? Or keys?
so yeah, so 750K for 48 keys.
Okay.
So we bought it and we got it owner financed at 6% interest, which is pretty good. And we are rehabbing out of pocket about 400K in terms of furnishing and rehabbing it.
Hmm.
And we already know that we have a huge amount of built-in equity because the hotel next door is actually selling for 1.5 for fewer keys. It's selling for $1.5 million, I think at 32 keys. And
Hmm.
so using that valuation in terms of, dollar per key, we're well north of 1.5 mil for our valuation already, without doing any rehab to it.
Yeah.
So we got a really good deal for it. And then our other hotel in Gulf, in the Texas Gulf, we got it for even cheaper. We got it for 385, and that's because it was really, really rough. It
Hmm.
had been hit hard by some of the storms in that area, and so we got a really, really dirt cheap price. 385 is way, way cheaper than the single family houses there. There are certain houses that
Hmm.
are 600K and up in that area.
Wow.
And then our rehab is going to be very steep on that one. It's going to be about 580K,
Hmm.
which I didn't want to do that deal unless I can get a really, really good bridge loan product. So I told my business partner, I was like, look, this is a great deal. But I already knew when we're buying this deal that the market conditions were going to be uncertain in a couple months. And so I was like, interest rates are going to go up. We don't know what the travel industry is going to do. We don't know what the supply issues, if they're going to continue to exist. So I don't want something that's an 18-month bridge product. I don't want something that's, a 24-month bridge product. I don't want something with sky high interest. If we can't get something that's a really good terms, I don't want to do this deal. So we ended up getting 6.5% interest for 5 years, 85% funded for the acquisition, 85% funded for the rehab as well.
Oh.
And then the rate is good for 5 years. It's a 5-year arm, and it's a 25-year amortization product. And
Hmm.
so we have a very long runway to make sure that we rehab this property well. And we also have a lot of time in case, let's say, supply issues are happening due to, whatever black swan event. We have a long runway to refinance this out in case the
Yeah.
interest rates continue to, increase. And so I did that purposefully. So we're also looking at a couple deals right now where it's almost like what kind of bank product we can get is going to inform whether or not we move forward on this deal.
Wait, okay, so then, I mean, one, how did you even find a lender to do this deal that's on the screen right now? The 6.5 at 5-year arm, like, who is that? Is that a
So that's actually a local bank. So you
okay.
can get way better rates for short-term rentals as well as hotels when you go to directly to a local bank.
Mhm.
Which I teach this in the tier in our mastermind program on how to figure out how to underwrite hotels as well as which lenders to call. But we're actually calling some lenders right now, And we don't know if we're going to do this deal that we're analyzing right now, but basically we're able to get as low as 4.75% interest on a hotel that we're analyzing right now, and they will also fund rehab. So it's actually funny that you can get such good rates on a hotel, but you cannot find those rates right now for short-term rentals.
Yeah, no, everything is sky high for even your second home loan. So that's man, that's that's really if you guys are watching right now and you guys are looking for short-term rentals, you guys better, I guess, reach out to Dia and join her mastermind because she has so many goodies for you. Okay, and so you talked about purchase price and rehabs and things like that. Do you have any kind of gross pro forma that you may be willing to share on what you could expect?
So let me look it up, but we were expecting, let me see if I can pull it up. We're expecting, let's see, give me 1 second.
No, all good. And then so while she's pulling that up, again, if you guys are watching this live, thank you for watching this live. You can comment down below with a little hand wave or something like that. Or if you have any questions, drop them in the comments because I have Dia for like 5 more minutes. So take full advantage of this.
Yeah, so we're looking at a total ROI about 96%, which is crazy, on this the one that we talked about where we acquire for 385. So we're projecting our gross revenue about 457K. So that one's great. Let's see. So yeah, I mean, I think that the other great thing about our buying a hotel versus buying short-term rentals is that you can actually still get amazing cash flow numbers and cash on cash numbers compared to short-term rentals. One, because the interest rate magically, for some reason, is still something that I lost the screen. 1 second.
That's okay.
So yeah, so it's still something that is relatively not as competitive from a buyer versus seller's market, and then
Mhm.
something that we can actually get relatively good interest rates for if you can find local banks to finance it. And we're able to get such diamonds in the rough right now, which I feel like with short-term rental markets the way they are, anything that can be a short-term rental is selling for like flying off the shelf right now
Mhm.
still. So I just felt like hotels was the most natural answer to that. So
Totally. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of people have, their residential 1 to 4 unit long-term rental properties, but so few make the step to multifamily just because the extra zeros are intimidating. The extra perceived work in front of it is also intimidating, and it's just harder. And it's the same, I'm sure, for motels and hotels is, you have some extra zeros, you have a few different extra keys along with it, and that now creates additional barriers when it was already hard enough to even just get one house operating.
mhm.
Um,
Oh,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
and I think that, for short-term rentals versus hotels, if you already understand how to operate a short-term rental, you already know how to run the world's smallest hotel. So why not think a little bit bigger and look at the ugly motel right across the street from you or the one that you're driving by every single day and go in and knock on the door and see if the owner is willing to sell to you. And then, you know, tax benefits is something that I don't have time to touch on, but you can have so much more tax benefits from commercial real estate due to cost segregation and bonus depreciation compared to your residential real estate. So that's another thing that we can offer both, that's something that we offer our investors as well as that's something that we experience as operators, right? So if I do a flip or whatever, I can easily offset that rent, that income, that short-term gain with commercial real estate. So that's something that is amazing. Is everyone wants to learn
Yeah.
how to do that legally, right? So
No, that's amazing. And the last question I have for you, Dia, is you mentioned that you're investors. So are you syndicating these deals or how are you structuring them?
So right now they're joint ventures with just very very few investors involved, and they're either so and then in our future deals we're going to syndicate them or potentially thinking about creating a fund for a target market and just doing a couple short-term rentals as well as hotels in that market.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, good to know. So I guess, as you wrap it up, I have a section called the last call, which is just final questions that I like to ask all of my guests who come onto the show. And my first one that I have for you is, can you share a win and a loss from the last week?
A win and a loss from the last week.
Something
Um,
that's recent and makes it relevant to the audience. Yeah. Anything at all.
so when is that now after, we're actually onboarding more and more hotel rooms in our Ozarks. So we're making money now, and even though we're renovating and, still most of the rooms are offline because it's just we bought it at such a low price, even though only a tiny fractions of our hotel room is actually online. We're going to be cash flow positive in terms of operating expense, versus like the income this month. So that's exciting. A loss, I don't actually know if there's one this weeks per se, but I've definitely lost a lot of, the road to commercial real estate investing. I thought it was going to be a lot more smooth than it ended up being. So there were a lot of deals I put under contract, a lot of earnest money, a lot of due diligence money that ended up losing on these deals, which is
Mhm.
why it motivated me to have a mastermind. So hopefully I save other people a lot more money and expensive mistakes that, when I first started, I really didn't know of anyone investing in hotels who came from a short-term rental space already. So I
Mhm.
really wanted to create that space for people. A tiny little loss this week was that we were trying to order 400 plus crates of flooring is crazy annoying when you can't get Home Depot or some of the other reps on the phone. So I had three flooring orders canceled on me 3 times now. So we're just gonna go. But luckily, my business partner collected a business card for a hospitality rep at one of the flooring companies, and so. And that flooring rep is overnighting some samples for me to pick from tomorrow. So hopefully my experience gets a little less frustrating with the flooring situation because we desperately need it in our renovations.
Yes. So for those who are listening, the supply chain issues are not exempt in the hotel space because we are all, I'm sure, feeling it in some capacity. We were ordering a couch for our Branson property, and that's now been delayed for another month. So
Oh
uh,
no.
I know it's no matter what you do, you can't escape it.
Yeah.
Um, well, it's good. Thank you so much. I guess, what are you looking for, and maybe how can people find you?
Yeah, so people, you feel free to message me on Facebook, Diya Liu on Facebook, or you can message me on Instagram as well, at Diya Liu ESQ. I am a little bit more responsive on Facebook Messenger than Instagram, but you can definitely reach me on both. And find me in Airbnb professional host, where I post a lot of updates on our hotel projects. I post a lot of webinars that we do. I post a lot. I try to be really, really active in the community and try to guide people in the right direction. If you have a question and I don't know the answer to the question, but I know another short-term rental operator in the area that you're in, I will tag them. So I try my best to stay on top of it. So definitely join the group if you want resources. If you want to learn how to scale to hotels, definitely join our mastermind. We are moving forward on analyzing hotel deals together. Alex, kudos, shout out to him. He actually flew out to a location yesterday to look at some hotel deals for us. And so yeah, we are doing a lot of hands-on exercises in our mastermind, including buying hotels together.
Well, I mean, one of your students is flying out and checking out the hotels with you, so I'm excited to see that project come through. I was seeing that he was visiting something on his Instagram stories, so there's that. And kind of the last vote of confidence, I am part of Dia's Facebook group, and you are actually one of the most active like group operators I have seen in a lot of these real estate groups. So I know it's super hard and takes a lot of time. So kudos to you. But Dia, thank you so much for joining us today. I learned a lot. I'm sure our viewers Learned a lot as well. Make sure to click, if you're watching this on the post play, I'll link down her Instagram, her Facebook group. You can send me your link to the mastermind and I'll add it to Dia. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And I'll see everybody on the next one. Bye, guys.